Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to today's episode. We talked about Morby method and different structures last time. This is Savan. I'm a transactional lender. I have Alyssa with me. She is with Elite Hub TC, and we are going to talk about Morby methods further. So, do you want to do a quick recap, Alyssa, of what we talked about last time and where we are going?
Yeah. Again, Alyssa with the Elite Hub transaction coordination team. We also do some operations. Last week, we mostly talked about the intro to Morby methods, right? It's a very hot topic word. And I gave a lot of my opinions, and I want opinions in all caps. Anyone who's listening to this, it's totally my opinion. There's other opinions out there. Find the opinion that jives best with you. But I think from your experience and my experience, this is kind of where we feel it's appropriate for the Morby methods. And I think today we're going to just dive into kind of the importance a little bit of having a TC or someone on your side. And it will just kind of piggyback off of, Morby methods are not a beginner strategy that you should be starting with. That's my opinion. Again, underlined caps, opinions. Some people disagree with me, and that's totally fine. I've just seen a lot of Morby methods fall apart, and so it's mostly because they're newbies, so they just don't know what they're doing. So that is what we're going to talk about.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what we wanted to start with. You said you have seen a lot of Morby methods fall apart. And for anyone who's not familiar with Morby method, it's either there are different names out there. It's seller carry back, seller second carry, stack method, and Morby method is of course the popular one. So you said you have been part of. You've seen a lot of them fall apart. What's the number of files you have worked on? How many deals you've been part of?
Yeah, so I'll give some general numbers. Total in 2024, so we helped 236 investors close $62 million worth of real estate. Now, that was not all Morby methods. I would say out of that, we probably touched 10 to 15 Morby methods out of that, which is a small portion. And I have only seen one in the last year actually go through. So that those stats, those KPIs, are not are not the best, right? I would love to say 10 out of 10, but that's just not what happens. So the one that went through, they had a very good relationship with the seller, and that's what I would lead with, right? Real estate is such a relationship game. And I don't even want to use the word game, but it is, to me, it's a game, right? It's like, you're playing real estate, you're playing Monopoly, right? So, but it's such a relationship game. And so if you don't have a good relationship with your seller, that is one reason that things fall apart, right? There's not full transparency. At the end of the day, that buyer is trying to get the best, deal for them. But really, you should be trying what's best for the seller, right? You're trying to help the seller in a situation. That's what happens a lot. And so going at it with that heart and changing that mindset behind it, I think is going to be a little bit more win-win. And so the relationship of it and the transparency. Another reason that they fall apart is numbers. They're not underwritten correctly. I think we talked about a little bit of one last week. A big thing was the underwriting was totally off. They said that their transactional lender was bringing around 70, but really when we worked the numbers and all the fees and the adjustments, it was 120. So then you got to go back to your transactional lender and be like, hey, transactional lender, I actually need this much money. Again, it comes back to relationships. So I really think having the good relationships is key. And when you don't have that, that is a point of contention where it starts to fall apart. Then it leads into title. You have to have a title company that understands, again, relationship, what's happening. I wasn't directly involved with this one, but I knew about it. There was one, hey, we're going to do a Morby method. But the DSCR covered the whole purchase amount. Okay, so then you're not doing a Morby method, you're just buying the property. You're just throwing words at a transaction because you want it to sound cool and awesome. And I'm doing Morby methods, and you're like, there's no reason for a Morby method here. And so it comes down to gathering all the data. I think coming to a transaction coordinator that's been a part of deals and going, what's the reality of this, right? So that's kind of my little soapbox on it. Now, again, transaction coordinators don't negotiate your deal. We're not here to structure your deal, but we are really good sounding boards for your deal because we see a lot of stuff.
So, quick question on the specific one you mentioned. You said DSCR was covering 100% of the price.
So it wasn't covering. I should totally frame that. Great question. It wasn't covering 100%, but with their money that they were planning to bring down, so they weren't really using a transactional lender in this one. They had money to bring down, but like the purchase price and what was going to be covered, they didn't need a seller carry portion. It covered enough, and the seller wanted to walk away, right, with the first mortgage being paid off, and they were going to still get some cash because it appraised correctly. And so there wasn't a reason for a second seller carry. And so they were just overcomplicating the transaction. And so they had funds to bring to the table themselves versus using a transactional lender for the down payment that the lender required. I want to say it was like an 80-20, like an 80% LTV. And so they had the 20%. And so then there was like, okay, well, the seller carry portion, you're like, you don't need a seller carry portion. The seller is happy and has everything that they want, and you qualify for enough and your credit score is great. Like, why are you overcomplicating it? Because you don't want to super over leverage, right? Sometimes you over leverage a little bit, right? But that was a weird situation where I was like, you're throwing around a word that doesn't need to be thrown around right now.
Right. So they wanted to get that 20% out. They were already putting in, or they're going to leave that in and still calling it Morby Method. So then it's just traditional finance.
It was just traditional finance, and they were just calling it Morby Method. They were like overcomplicating it, right? Because again, it's this buzzword, right?
Yeah.
Same with novations right now. And I'm like, what Zooms are coming out right now? But like Morby Method, it's a buzzword. And so she's like, oh my gosh, like this Morby Method. And you're like, no, you're not doing a Morby Method. You're actually just doing conventional financing, which is so great that you qualify for that. And you're like, yay.
Yeah. Get done with simple stuff, basically.
Exactly.
So maybe we can dive deeper into that. You mentioned these are the suggestions you give. You are not there to structure the deal, but you are a good sounding board. So can we talk about the procedure? What is the role of a TC where you can help? What is like job description?
Yeah, great question. So I will put a disclaimer, right? Again, we're not attorneys. This is just from our experience. Now, what makes my team a little different than I would say maybe other teams or other transaction coordinators is all of us really come heavily from the investor hat or the investor world. And so we're all investors. And so we can easily take off our transaction coordinator hat and go, I'm full investor mode talking to you like we're going to purchase it together. And so a lot of times when we do Morby Method consults, or even an introductory call before we do a formal Morby Method consult, I will have another team member in there so that someone can play the role of the TC and someone can play the role of more of as an investor. So then I can go to you and go, hey, my investor hat is totally off right now. And I will say that in all the Zooms. I go, I don't have my TC hat on, right? Because TCs aren't supposed to help structure the deals. Or that it's not really our role. And so now, granted, a lot of TCs can help structure deals because we see a lot, right? We know what works, we know what doesn't, but there has to be that fine line and disclosure, in my opinion, of what we can do, because otherwise then that TC, in my opinion, gets taken advantage of. Okay, hey TC, I want you to structure my deal. I want you to negotiate. I want you to do all my underwriting. I want you to do this, this, and this. And the TC sitting there and this has gone through my head. Well then, honey, I would just go get the deal myself. Because if I'm going to do everything that you're supposed to be doing, right, yeah, I would just go do it. But so the transaction coordinator is really that support role, if you will, right? We're going to come in and we're going to be your second set of eyes. We're going to become that main point of contact for title and all parties. Now, main point of contact, but doesn't mean we're going to negotiate, right? So if we go into a deal together and something comes up, right? I just want to use a simple transaction. for this, even though we're talking about Morby methods. But let's just say we're buying a sub 2 property and something comes back on the inspection report. Well, it's not going to be my job to negotiate because the roof is falling off, right? I'm going to go to you and I'm going to be, hey, there's in the inspection report, there's this like major red flag with the roof. What do you want to do about it? I can write the addendum for it. I can, appropriately move the transaction forward on that, but you're going to have to go to the seller and talk about the roof because that's not my role. Unless we're partners on the deal, right? Then there's another role. Are you coming in as a partner and you know how to do the TC work, or are you really just the TC? So we're going to become that main point of contact. We deal with all parties. We make sure, especially in sub 2, you've got the appropriate disclosures, all that kind of stuff. But really, we're just kind of there to keep the conveyor belt rolling, the wheel rolling, however you want to make it, so that you can go get more deals. And you can focus on that while we're kind of doing the back end. Okay, hey, your LLC docs. Okay, we need this. Okay, title's asking for this. We kind of become that catch-all while you go get more deals, because that's what you like doing, right? We like paperwork. You guys like to go get more deals. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, to recap on that, the investor becomes the decision taker, the negotiation part, deal finding part, but what actually protects the interest of the investor is that paperwork, that communication, maintaining that timeline, talking to the title company in correct stages and in the correct manner. All of that is handled by you, so I can just come in with convince seller, talk to you, this is the structure we are going for, and then you can take everything from there. Right,
Yeah. So, and
contracts.
you'll bring your signed contract, because normally that's done before you get to us too. Now, again, we provide different services than some other teams, right? Because of my real estate background. But we won't get into all of that. But yeah, so a signed contract comes to the TC. TC becomes the main point person, and then you kind of just go and finish doing what you got to do, which is usually going and getting more deals. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. And that's obviously very high level, because I will be completely honest, some of these deals go to frickin', can we swear on here?
Yeah,
They go to shit fast, man. Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. But we love it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's only how you can keep going. um, you mentioned that you have seen a lot of deals fall apart. uh, you briefly touched on the reasons: transparency, underwriting, numbers. Can we dive deeper, taking a case study, and what have you seen?
Yeah.
So,
I can give a few different ones. I would say the biggest is, like I said, transparency in numbers. So, one recently where we actually stepped out prior, because the transparency wasn't happening. And we were advised that we should step out by counsel, attorney counsel. Like, this isn't a deal that we should be a part of. But the main thing on that is there wasn't the transparency. That one also had the skewed numbers. That was the same deal that had this. They were underwriting 70, and transaction lender actually had to bring in 120, which luckily that transactional lender could do that. And so that part was fine. But then all of a sudden you're talking about the transparency issues and the seller's getting frustrated, right? Back to that relationship. You just made your main relationship irritated, right? It was getting delayed, and then the appraisal, and then, the survey had to be ordered, and then the lender was like, hey, why is there a second position? Because the contract wasn't written correctly. And so all parties were just not getting the transparency that they needed from the beginning and the full story. And then it was like, oh, this. And so that client just wasn't ready to scale in Morbies. And so they just, again, it's not it has to be a seasoned strategy, not a, hey, brand new, let me go get 17 Morby methods and that's going to be my main strategy. That's not the way to start. In my opinion, I'll say that again, my opinion, some people love them, but that was a big one. And so there was numerous things about that one, but the main thing was that transparency. And then they weren't really listening to people that had more experience.
so the contract part, the lender was questioning the second position, and in a Morby method, you don't record a second position until you have the first closing technically.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did that come to be? Did they not come to you first, or after the contract, or they did everything and then came to you just
Yeah,
for the closing?
great
So how does that
question.
work?
So yeah, so this one the lender didn't allow the second position, so when the contract was written incorrectly, right? Which then comes
Okay.
back to the transparency. Hey seller, what you want, we can't make happen with the way that we need to make it happen, right? It's coming down to having these realistic conversations. Hey seller, you want all this money, and I wish that I could make it happen, but through a DSDR, that's not going to work. And then obviously they can have that secondary conversation. Hey, maybe we can do it like that. Maybe we do a joint LLC and we refinance, right? Stuff that we kind of highly touched on last episode, which I know we'll dive deeper into. So there's other ways to make it work. But yeah, so this one, they were in a big rush because the seller wanted it rushed. And so again, don't ever rush anything. If anything like is needing to be rushed in real estate, your red flags need to kind of start going up. Why is this being rushed? Right now, you can still rush stuff, but you first should be like, okay, why is this being rushed? Right? Never rush a Morby method. It's complicated, or it's more complicated, right? So it was rushed, and so they came to us, and obviously learning portion on my side, I should have said no right away. But I was like, hey, of course we can help you, right? Because
Hmm.
that's TCs love to help people, right? So I should have just said no right away. Big learning lesson on my side too. But so that was already done. The contract was already done. You know, we said, hey, this needs to be changed. It didn't get changed. It got sent to title, right? So there was too many cooks in the kitchen too. They didn't fully let us just take over and
Hmm.
become that main person. And so it was title was already opened with a title company that we didn't recommend. They went to someone else and got that recommendation, and they were like, okay, they're familiar with Morby methods. Okay, well, it's already opened. And so there was a lot of things that were out of our control as well. And then normally we want to use the title company that we know can do it, because then title was confused half the time. And so we were going, oh my gosh, can title even make this happen? Yes, they can. Then they were confused. Yes, they could. Then they were confused. And so you're the whole time everyone was just like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? And so the transparency and the chaos, and then you had, well, this person is saying this, and you're like, you're not working with that person. Why are you talking to that person? Which you're trying to get information, but it's like there was just too many bodies where you're like, let's get all of the facts first, not rush it. Yes, get counsel from someone else. If you want to do it their way, then go do it with them. Don't come to us and say we need to do it this way, right? Because we have our process behind it. And so it was just really chaotic. They were really nice people. They're really nice people, but it was just like, this is not how you should be running business.
And there are two points in there that resonate with me with my experience as well. That first is the title company itself. They can be the your best friend or your worst enemy in this
Exactly.
transaction specifically, because it's first everything is going to run through them. They will be the ones drafting the second position. They will be the ones understanding who needs to see what and all of that. And I have seen that when you have the title company who's experienced in Morby Method specifically, and you go to them doing that, you don't have to tell them anything. They'll ask you the right question. They will even advise you, hey, don't do this. This is not how it's going to work out. Your
Hmm.
lender is not going to like this, or they have this requirement, all of that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and that then translates to trusting the person that you've hired to do the job. Focus on what you are supposed to do, and then trust the other person completely. If you don't, then just don't work with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, going even back to the title, and there's a lot of different stuff coming down, I will say, the pipe, right? More DSCR lenders are paying attention. Our seconds being recorded. More title companies are starting to say no to Morby methods. That was another thing, is we had another title company and they were like, no, we're not taking this file. And we were like, well, oh, shoot. And they explained why, right? So there were numerous things happening, right? And coming at us of going, hey, this isn't right. This isn't structured correctly. Okay, well, we kind of already said that, but they didn't listen. And then they went and talked to this person, right? And so it just comes down to, at the end of the day, there's no real estate deal that's worth, going off like your ethics or making it happen or pissing off a seller. Like there's no real estate transaction worth that. And so it's
Yeah,
like
definitely.
make it win-win for all parties, right? Because like the seller was pissed by the end, and I'm like, yeah, I would be too. Now he should also be mad at his real estate agent because it sat on the market for over a year. So it's like you're getting a crappy deal because you sat on the market and you're overpriced, and someone finally came in and wanted to buy it, but now he's mad, and like you don't want your seller mad.
Yeah.
So I just there's so much to it that it just comes down to that relationship and transparency and not rushing it. I mean, there's no reason.
Yeah.
So
Sellers might have tight timeline, but in that case, this is not just a deal or just a strategy or a structure that you want to go for.
yeah,
If that's the case, uh,
everything can be fixed with an addendum. It's fine, right? It's totally
yeah,
fine. Like, because like you said,
yeah,
sometimes sellers do have a timeline, but why? I know you always just need to ask a lot of why questions. Why does the seller have a tight timeline? Okay, they're starting a job. Okay, is there another solution? Because we shouldn't rush this, right?
hmm.
What are the bunnies, right? As what Pace says. What are the true bunnies behind it? Okay, I'm starting a job. Okay, cool. But you have a new home lined up. Okay, cool. Like, okay, so as you're financing, like there's so many different like layers to it where it's like, why is it a rush? Because we need to do this right. We need to do it ethically. We need to, make sure that nobody is, going to come back and quote unquote get in trouble. And so it's how can this be done right, win-win for all parties, and make everyone happy at the end of the day too. So again, my underlined all caps opinions on this.
Opinions. Yeah, and it's same with what we have seen as well. The after title companies, the biggest bottleneck is going to be the DSCR lender, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
never going to work with a tight timeline. You'll have to give them all the time, because especially you're going to tell them I have a third party bringing in the funds. You're going to tell them we have a second position, and if they don't allow it, you definitely don't want not working with them, because as you said, you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get in trouble. So uh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
definitely
it's
a
a
big thing.
process. And I've seen numerous people too. I've seen this in ones that haven't, gone through is, something with title company didn't work. So they just switched title companies. Something with lender didn't work. So they switched lending companies. And so you have to take your time in finding the appropriate parties that can service and what you want to accomplish. Because if they don't allow a second position, what's the solution? You got to find someone that allows a second position, or you have to restructure the deal. Okay, you have to give time to restructure, because if the seller's thinking that they're getting this, but you have to restructure it, that's something that they have to mull over and kind of like accept, right? Because if I came to you and I was like, hey, seller, I plan on giving you $250,000 as a seller carry, and I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month, but the lender said no. So now we have to restructure it, and we're going to be on a joint LLC together, and we're going to own it together. Seller's going to be like, what the frick is happening, man? I was counting on that $1,000, right? They already spent that $1,000. And so you have to take time to do it.
Yeah,
Um,
and that
so yeah.
comes back to the relationship part as well. Maintain that relationship. And other thing, on the lender side, we also always advise, because of this dynamic, a lot of churn, a lot of uh, moving pieces. Even though you have a lender that allows second position and third party funds, we always tell our clients, make sure you have a backup lined up, because
Totally.
yeah, once it goes into underwriting, they'll always flag something, which usually you will be surprised, but that does
Yeah.
happen.
Well, and then another thing too is that that kind of skews the numbers, and is that it doesn't appraise the comps that maybe the people pulled in were not the right kind of comps, and so that underwriter and the appraiser really ultimately are going to say what it's worth. And so
Yeah.
if that appraiser comes in and says, hey, yo, it's not going to appraise, then it's like back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and we always suggest to underwrite for the worst case scenario. So, if you're structuring, make sure you're considering 2 points over typical going rate. Make sure you are keeping 10% margin on your number that you're expecting to appraise for the deal to work out. If all of that doesn't happen, don't go for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you is there a guideline you guys suggest for underwriting side? They don't have a lender, they want to do a movie method, but these are the numbers. Do you suggest go for at least up to 1.25 DSCR, 1.3 DSCR, consider at least 7% or 2%, 1% or 2% higher?
Yeah, I don't really have those specific numbers. I always just say error on the side of caution
Yeah,
because it really depends. Because yes, the DSCR qualifies via the property, but you also are going to have to, like, your credit's still going to be pulled. Like, I've been a
yeah,
credit sponsor before, and so it's like, okay, it depends on your credit. Do you know what your credit is? Do you not know? Like, there's so many little variables that people don't think about. And so I'm like, err on the side of caution. And like you said earlier, have that plan B, be ready to renegotiate. And you really got to know what's happening in the market. Because if you go in to this property and you're like, okay, cool, I think it's this because I looked at Zillow and these are kind of the comps. Okay, that's not wrong. But what else do you know about that market? What's happening in that market? Like, I can talk specifically of where I'm at, right? The chip factory, the TSMC chip factory, is less than 6 miles from my house. Okay, well, that's huge. So this area is blowing up. So I know that. So that could, help me, right, in mine. But if you're heading into a new market too that you've never worked for and you don't totally know what's happening in that market, you could look on Zillow and then the appraiser is going to say something else. And so you really have to you just have to err on the side of caution and go, okay, what's my rehab budget? Always add more to a rehab budget if you have to do rehab. Things are really expensive right now. They have been. And you usually are under budget. And so you should have a buffer in budget if you're doing it. And so it's the same thing, is just err so much on the side of caution. I don't have a specific number though.
yeah, makes sense. Can we talk about another case study? The successful one you mentioned was, did you
Mm-hmm.
have to jump through a lot of hoops on that?
Yeah, so that one, I was partnered with someone else on it. Um, and there were a lot of hoops. I mean, we probably did 6 consults before it even went under contract. I mean, this Morby method took months. But he had such a great relationship with the seller because he had already purchased something from the seller. And so they had that relationship. And so, so sorry. They had that relationship. And so that's, I think, why it was successful, because any other seller probably would have been annoyed with how long it took. I want to say that Morby method, don't totally quote me, but it probably took 8 or 9 months. Yeah. And so, and there was, yeah, and I feel like there was just hours of consults of going back and forth before it even went under contract. And then it was talking, with the title company. The title company understood it. But again, there was the escrow holdback instructions. I mean, but it was wild. And finally, when it closed, it was like, oh my gosh, thank God, like, just because it took that long. Um, but I mean, I won't take full credit for that one for sure. But like, we're really strict. Like, we like just put the hammer down of like, this isn't going to go through. This isn't going to appraise. These numbers don't seem right. We're pretty cutthroat, just because I know how much work goes into them, that I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste the seller's time. I don't want to waste the investor's time. The one that we had a little while ago that just ended up being a dumpster fire. It was this like Hail Mary, like, hey, let's do it. I think that we've got it. And it just got too chaotic too fast with all the parties. And so that's usually what happens. But yeah.
So to cap this up, we always say when any of our clients come in, we always recommend that it's almost necessary to have a TC on a Morby method. And we get a lot of pushback on in saying, why do I need a TC? I have structured this. I have the contracts ready. My title company understands this. And then a week long deal takes 2 months, and then we are still at the same place. We are in one right now that's happening. So why not do it without a TC?
It's a very great long answer. So I'll be pretty high level here. And I think so, just so everyone knows, we're going to do a deep dive into case studies and numbers. And we're going to do a whole episode of that. So that will also show in that episode. But I think really, we're your second set of eyes, we're your sounding board. Everyone comes and they think that they have the Morby method structured, and us TCs can ask one question and the deal falls apart, right? How are you going to pay back your transactional lender? What's your budget for that? Do you have this fee in there? Are you appropriately calculating the lender cost, and what's that going to cost? Are you appropriately doing comps, right? So there's all these general questions that we come in our more, just even in a consult, right? Do you know how to properly communicate with title? Do you have that title relationship, or you don't have that title relationship, right? So I think using a TC, right? We come and we're on your team. We want this deal to close just as much as you. So we want the success for it. Obviously, our role is different in that success, but we're your eyes, we're your ears, we're, pushing that needle forward. You're stuck at one and it's been 2 months and it's at the same spot. Why? Well, because there's no TC pushing along going, hey, where's this paperwork? Where's this addendum? Hey, title this, right? We kind of become that annoying person, like, hey, where's this piece of paper? Hey, what about this? Hey, you know what I just heard over here? And so we become that person for you. And I know that's really high level, but it's, we want the deal to go through just as much as you. And, we also have a lot of stories. I mean, if you haven't caught on by now, we have a lot of experience and we hear stories, right? Or we've seen, and we'll see this in the case study, episode, right? But we've seen numbers that work, numbers that don't work, what's calculated, what's not calculated. And so we can just be that sounding board for you. But if you think you don't need a TC, well, try it yourself and see how far that gets you.
Yeah.
But again, we're not your attorney, so we're not the end all be all either, but we can help you get it done.
Makes sense. Yes. That was perfect. So, as you said, we are going to cover case studies with exact numbers on some of the deals, and there is more stuff coming as well. So, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun ride.